Because of the way the universe is created, we each of us live in two worlds at the same time. We have to live in the outer life of our own bodies and the inner life of our own souls.
Hello and welcome to Living the Inner Life. I'm your host, Chris Sheridan, and I want you to join with me on a discovery process of looking into our inner lives, our thoughts, our feelings, our beliefs, our experience, everything that we have going on inside us that helps us determine how to respond or react to the things around us in the outer world. And that's what I want to talk about today. Reaction versus response. Okay, those are two basic ways to respond, I guess, to what happens in the outer world, how we react, how we respond. And those are very different things. A reaction is more knee-jerk. It's really without much thought. It's habitual. We've done it this way 100 times before, and this is how we're going to react this time as well. And a response takes at least a little bit of thought. You have to pause for a second and say, wait a minute, how do I want to think about this thing that just happened? How do I want to feel about it? How do I want to speak or respond with words on this? Do I lash out, or do I curb my tongue, or do I think of a more reasonable response? And also with our actions, so we can be reactive or responsive in thoughts, speech, and action. Now, there's a little story by Portia Nelson. She was one of the nuns in the A Sound of Music movie, in case you're wondering about that. And she wrote a very short story. It's maybe a page long, and it's actually an autobiography in 5 acts. And it goes a little something like this. You may have heard it. I'm walking down the sidewalk one day, and I fall into a deep hole. I'm mad, and I get out of the hole and go about my way. Next day, I'm walking down the sidewalk, and I fall into a deep hole. I realize this was my fault, and I get up, and I get out, and I go on my way. The third day, I'm walking down the sidewalk, and I fall into the hole again because it's habit. I know it's my fault, and I know I can change my habit, so I crawl myself out of the hole and go about my way. And the fourth day, I'm walking down the sidewalk, and I see the hole, and I walk around it. Fifth day, I take a different sidewalk. Okay, this is kind of a outline of how you can go from reaction to response, from a habitual reaction to one that's a little more thought out, one that requires your present moment awareness, and one that requires a little bit of thought, removed from the emotional, because a lot of the reactions are very ingrained. They're habitual. A lot of times they're emotional, or they're tinctured with emotion, that if somebody says something, it can raise the hairs on the back of your neck, and you get chills, and you start seeing the red mist in your eyes, and wow, you're off to the races with some crazy reaction with that. All right, but not everything has to be reacted to. We can respond to a lot of things. And as well, there are times when a reaction, without overthinking something, may be the best way, especially if it's an emergency where you don't really have time to think about things. You can't really go through all the different contingencies and, well, let me think about this. No, if somebody falls down, or even before they fall down, if you see somebody starting to fall, or a kid falling off the couch or trying to jump out of their high chair, you're not going to formulate a well thought out response. You're going to react instantly, hopefully, and meet the emergency, meet the large or small emergency, meet it where it is, bring your best reaction/response to it without too much thought, because you don't really have to think about some of those things. If it's an actual factual danger, or somebody may be in peril, that you would want to act as swiftly as possible. And you really have to react It's a reflex. It's a response that takes no thought. So this is a reaction. Those are probably good times, not necessarily good on themselves, but that would be a good place where you would want to use a reaction. You don't have time to formulate a response. But where it gets us in trouble is where we react the same way over and over and over to something. And then it's habitual. Then there's no time or really any kind of chance for thought, or maybe thinking about it differently this time. Okay? Like the person in the story with the sidewalk, there was some self-reflection after several times falling in to the hole. Like, well, wait a minute, maybe I can see this. Maybe I can do something about this. And it can take a while. If you want to change your reaction to a response, you may have to, especially if you've reacted many times and it's become a habit of reaction, it may take a while. You may have to go through it a couple times, and you may have to catch yourself after the fact going, oh, darn, I reacted instead of responded. Okay, then you can pause and go, okay, so I did that. I reacted, I yelled back, or I defended myself, and I slung an insult back at this person who cut me off in traffic, or any kind of, quarrel or something you may have with somebody in the workplace or in your home. And you can say, well, okay, was this the best way? Okay, you have to look at yourself and your reaction in a critical but very positive, very constructive way. If you just get mad at yourself and then you think, well, geez, I'm a loser and, there's no hope for me, then you're in trouble. But if you can, even if you make the bad reaction and you're wanting to change that, if you do it again, you can say, hey, all right, I noticed it this time. Yeah, it was after the fact, like after I fell in the hole. But now I can pause and reflect and go, okay, was there a better way to handle this? What could I have done differently? What can I do differently in the future when something similar like this happens? Or I come across the same person, or I see the same news story, or whatever it is that can produce this knee-jerk reaction. Okay? And then tell yourself, okay, next time, if it's the hole on the sidewalk or whatever it is, tell yourself, I'm going to respond. I'm going to pause. Before I say anything, do anything, and really even get on the thought train. Everything begins with thought. That I can pause and then think about my thoughts. Think about what I'm doing. Think about where I am. Think about what was said. If somebody insulted me, do I have to really defend it? Do I have to insult back? Maybe you can just go, well, okay, so that person doesn't like me and they have a bad opinion, or they said something nasty. At least I'm not like that, But if you play into that and you just sling some mud back at this person, you're really not doing anything better or different than what they are doing. And if you don't like it, well, then you're doing something you don't like. So be critical, be positive and constructive with your critique of yourself. Use it as a way to improve, as a way to tell yourself and remind yourself it's okay. You don't deny it. It's okay to recognize when you've made a mistake or you've reacted to a situation in an unfavorable way. So it may take a few times, and eventually you'll get to the point to where you'll find that wiggle room. You'll find that space. And some researchers think it's about somewhere between a half a second and a second is all you have. If you can wait that long, if you can pause long enough to count, maybe a 3 count, 1, 2, 3. Okay, now I'm going to respond. Usually a reaction happens more quickly than that. It's, like I said, it's knee-jerk. When this thing hits, you slap back or talk back or feel bad. You could have an emotional reaction to things, and we do. Things affect us. But you can say, okay, do I want to feel this way? Do I want to keep feeling this way when this situation happens? Can I feel a different way? Can I have a different thought come in? Can I reframe this in some way? Can I speak back in a more compassionate, more loving, more understanding way? Or maybe just in a silent way by not saying anything at all. And can I react or respond rather than react to this condition with my actions? Okay, am I going to do something, fly off on the handle, whether it's verbally or physically? Or am I going to, wait a minute, just pause for a second, take a deep breath, and go, okay, how do I want to feel about this? And if you're present enough and you've kept a watchful eye, at least a couple times before, you will know, oh, here it is again. Last time, and maybe the last 100 times, if it's been that long, that I was faced with this situation, I reacted this way. Now, did that work out well? Was that fruitful? Was it constructive? Did it improve things? Did I feel better afterwards? Now, you may feel better in the moment if you react in a retaliatory way. Especially if you feel like you're being attacked, well, then you defend back or you attack the other situation or the other person back. Has that really helped? Has that gotten you very far? Or might there be a better way? And that's where this response is, to respond. Okay, you're still going to have some way of thinking, way of speaking, and a way of acting regarding this situation or the condition or the person. But you can have a better response instead of a reaction. And if you don't really know what that is, it will come to you. But keep that vigilant eye. Keep your presence in the moment. Keep the eye on yourself and what you're doing, not so much about what the other person did or that hole in the sidewalk. You could be a victim and say, well, who put that hole in the sidewalk there? I'm walking down the sidewalk and, geez, this wasn't my fault. Okay, maybe you didn't put that hole in the sidewalk. Maybe it wasn't your fault the first time. You weren't expecting it. Nobody really is. But maybe you weren't paying attention. Maybe you had walked down that sidewalk 100 times before and there wasn't a hole there, and today there is. And wow, you fell in. And yeah, you can feel a little upset about whoever put the hole in there and didn't put a rope around the, thing with a caution sign or some orange cones or something like that. Yeah, and justifiably so. But the next time, it's not really somebody else's fault, okay? Maybe it's still somebody else's responsibility to fill in the hole, but if you already knew that, okay, even if you didn't catch yourself the second time, try to catch yourself the third time or the fourth time, okay? And then try not to be a victim, right? Because what do they say? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And the who said, won't get fooled again. Anyway, if you don't want to be fooled again, if you don't want to fool yourself, okay, come up with a better response than the initial reaction, and don't just go blindly into the response with the reaction. Go in with a thought-out response, okay? And if this is a situation or a person that you are going to come into contact, like walking down the sidewalk more than once, have that at the ready. If you can have a response, even afterwards, again, after the fact in the parking lot, you can go, oh, dang, I should have said this. Well, commit that to memory. And then next time, then you have a response and you're ready for it. Okay? But in that moment, in that split second between the reaction and maybe a second or two later, when you can actually respond consciously, not unconsciously, consciously respond, okay, that's when you have to ask yourself, okay, do I want to react or do I want to respond? What can be better? What would be a better response? Okay, and like I said, sometimes the response, instead of a reaction, is sometimes to do nothing. Now, I don't mean when there's an emergency or there's an injustice or something like that. But if our egos are a little bit stronger and not so weak and defended, if we are more present with ourselves, this is a big thing. about the inner life. It's probably one of the most important tools you can use is this quality of presence, being present in the moment. You're present in your body, you're present with your surroundings, and you're also present, like I said, keeping that watchful eye on yourself and what you're doing. You have to pull back a little bit and be an observer to yourself. Otherwise, you're just on autopilot. Okay. And again, there are some times when a reaction, an instantaneous, before the speed of thought to react, you need to. Emergency, peril, any situation that requires that. And the good part is with that, a lot of times in emergencies, we do come up with the best thing in the moment without even thinking. It heightens our awareness that we instinctively can a lot of the times do the right thing. Okay? But that's in kind of a spur of the moment emergency. If it's something that's similar, something that's happened before, somebody said something, it could be a different person that says something similar, and you can have the same reaction to it. So first of all, just choose not to react, or ask yourself, am I reacting or responding? You may have to be damage control after the fact, but remind yourself, tell yourself, I resolve to respond, not react. Okay? Let me give it a thought. You can count to 3. If you have the time and space, you can actually count to 10. That's a popular thing in the lexicon, is to, give it 10 seconds, count to 10. Especially if you have multiple things coming at you at once. Okay, there's an acronym called HALT, HALT. It's when you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. Okay, and if that's going on, that's like a check-in. Wait a minute, halt. Am I hungry? Am I angry or hangry? I guess is a term we use now that combines both of them, and they are related. Lonely or tired. Those can affect the way we respond and even react to things much differently than we would if we're fed and we're a little bit rested and we feel like we're part of the world and we're awake enough that we can be more present and we can develop a response to a situation. Okay, so this present moment awareness is so important. And that's really where you can get this leverage. Okay, if you're not paying attention, you're just going to be on autopilot and you'll keep getting the same thing. If you keep reacting in the same way to similar situations, you're going to get the same outcome. So if you want a different outcome, try a different response instead of a reaction. Okay? So ask yourself, what's the best way to respond to that? And that will require, maybe at another time when you have some time for yourself, to go about your values. What is more important? Okay, I spent a lot of time, many, many years in Hollywood, but some of those years were spent in the actual Hollywood, the filmmaking and television and all that. I didn't get very far as an actor. I did as a filmmaker, but that's another story. But I did work with actors, and I did go out on auditions, and I was in acting classes and things like that. And many stories. One of them was this woman who would go out on auditions, but she was very hostile towards casting directors who, the person you audition for, and they're awkward, it's cold read, it's kind of the worst environment, which they do that on purpose, because if you can do a good job there, then you can do a good job when everything is perfect and set up, on the movie set or the television studio. But she was so hostile and so reactive towards these casting directors who were much younger than her. And it's like, well, I don't want her telling me what to do. I go in there, I learn my lines, and now she's telling me that she wants me to play it like I'm a frog, or, what would you do if you're, actors do all these, scenarios where they play different roles as a different person just to kind of get more out of it. And I think that's what casting directors want to do. But every time she would lose the audition, she could learn her lines. She was a halfway decent actor. But it was always this personality thing and this reaction. And that comes down to a value system. What's more valuable? You maintaining face and being right, your right to be right, even if this casting director is a little condescending and a little young and inexperienced, and you're know-it-all and you've been down this road before and you know what's going on, and how dare they speak to me like that. If that's really important, if that's really what you want to defend, do it consciously. Say, hey, that is important. I'm not going to take any crap from a casting director. I don't care about the role. They give me one bad bit of advice or talk back to me, I'm out of there. Okay? Then that's your value. But do it consciously. Do it knowingly. All right? Not just because a lot of these reactions creep in. And what they can do is they can really throw a wrench in the works. Okay? If she's going out on an audition and learning the lines in the first place, well, that would tell me that she's wanting to get a role, wanting to land the audition and get hired and do the part. Okay? But her reaction towards the personality exchange with the casting directors always got in the way. And I worked with her for a while and I said, look, you just have to put that aside. If you want the role, if that is more valuable to you in your life, values are so important, what we value. Know that. Remind yourself of that. And then go in with a little bit of a force field, a little bit of a shield that's going to protect you. Saying, you know what? They're probably going to say something crappy to me. Yeah, the casting director's probably going to be younger than me. They're not going to know what's going on. And they're going to say something stupid, and I'm not going to like it. But you know what? That's okay. I'm okay with that. It's not going to affect me because I'm there to land the role. I'm there to get the part. Okay? I'm stronger than that. I'm bigger than that. This is a small value. Getting the part is a bigger value, if that's the case. Then you can instruct yourself before you go into this situation, and you're going to err on the side that is more important and let the lesser important things not be there. Because a lot of our reactions, I think honestly, if we take the time to think about them, they may not be that important. Was it really that important to talk back? Felt good in the moment. I felt under attack, and I had to defend myself. Well, really, did you? Was it that important? Especially if it messed something else up that ostensibly would be more important to you. So you have to work with your values. And one of the values you can work on is, do I want to react to situations and people, or do I want to respond? Response takes a moment or two. Just prevent yourself from reacting. It takes that present moment awareness, and it has to have some predetermined set of values that you can latch onto. So you can say, I really want to talk about, but wait a minute. No, it's not that important. I'll bite my tongue. Okay. Even though they're wrong and they have me all wrong. It's not worth it. Okay, I'll let them be wrong. And if they think wrong things, that's fine. It's not that important. Okay. Now, if you're in a court case and you're trying to defend yourself legally, you may want to speak up, But for the most part, I think a lot of these reactions are petty. Okay. They are less important than other things. Find out what's more important. Even if you don't know what's more important, you got to think that, maybe anything is more important than me just reacting. Because when a reaction, you make something worse. It's tit for tat. Well, somebody threw a punch and you throw a punch back, verbally or whatever. And it escalates. It makes, the situation worse. It doesn't really improve things. A breath or two, centering yourself, knowing what's important, what can bounce off you, and what is really valuable to you will help you develop a response. And if this person has you wrong and they don't get it, then respond in a way that may help them understand you better. Okay? And you may have to do it in a little more thought out way instead of a reactionary way. Okay? So that's the reaction versus response. I want to know what your reaction, or rather your response is to this episode. Leave me a note and let me know how it goes. And we'll see you next time here on Living the Inner Life.